beautiful people, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm addressing the common reasons why funders are going to reject your funding application for business. My name is Thandisa Mahe, and I talk all things relating to business, making money, and the family life. Thank you so much for returning. If you are a returning subscriber, we truly appreciate your support. If you're new to this channel and you love things relating to business and making money and the family life, make sure that you consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Now, let's get into the reason why I actually thought I must do this video. I have actually received a lot of engagement from people that are stating that their applications for funding have been rejected. And some of them are very much depressed and they are very much, they're not happy about it and they're sad about it. And I wanted to bring a perspective from the funder's end as to what are the reasons why your application could sometimes be rejected. Because not all applications are going to be successful unless they meet certain requirements. And if you do some of the things that I am going to talk about today, then your application could potentially be rejected. It is so that you can be able to position yourself appropriately to make corrections, to review some of the things that I'm going to mention and see what are some of the things that you can be able to change in your application to make sure that you position it for success. Let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to be touching on 25 reasons. A whole 25 reasons, and as we get to the end of the video, they are going to be getting juicier and juicier because they are all important for you to understand so that you ensure that you eliminate them as part of your application process. Number one, it's a lack of a clear business concept or a compelling business idea or business concept. Now, I know this can get very controversial very quickly, but we need to get to a point where we actually understand that sometimes the ideas that we come up with, they are not compelling, they are not enticing, they are not interesting, they are not viable, they cannot be commercialized, they are bad ideas. I'm sorry to say this, I know it might hurt, but sometimes we do come up with bad ideas, ne? And I think that you can never really know if your idea is good or bad until you test it out in the market. And what I mean, I don't mean rolling out the actual business, but engaging with people that are in the business space, asking them what are their thoughts, engaging with the potential market, engaging with funders, financiers, like experts in the industry, just to vet and to see if your idea is good or not. I always say it's great to speak about your business idea to people that know about business, because also in doing that, they will give you information to refine it so that by the time you approach a funder, you actually have a well-refined business idea that will just fly. Okay? That's the first reason. The second reason sometimes is that you have not done enough market research and you are not showing that you have an clear understanding of the target market. Now remember, a funder, a financier, an investor, when they want to put their money into a business, they need to be sure that you as the business owner have done your research. They need to be sure that when you are presenting your numbers or information that relates to how big the market is, the trends that are happening within the market, the growth opportunities, the risks, the challenges and stuff like that, they need to be able to believe that you have done enough and you have provided enough information for them to be at a comfort to say that definitely there is a market gap, there is an opportunity in the market, and when we put our money in this business, we're going to be able to get it back. The other big problem, it comes in the space of financial projections. You can have weak or unrealistic financial projections where you have overly stated revenues and you have understated your costs. This is very much important. Yes, any funder, anyone that's going to come and support your business, they're looking for a business that shows growth, sustainability, that shows profits, that shows a good revenue, but it needs to be realistic. You're not going to get there in your business plan and say that even though everyone knows that a loaf of bread in South Africa goes up to 20 Rand, and then when are you going to say that your loaf of bread is 5 Rand and it costs you 1.50 Rand to produce, Things like that, they automatically put the funder at a place where they're not easy, because they can see that, no man, there's something wrong here. And when there's an incorrect element within your financial projections, it kind of plays a negative or puts a negative shadow on the rest of the calculations. Like someone will just go and think that maybe the numbers are not as correct because they've identified an incorrect element somewhere. So you need to be very careful when you are doing your financial projections. Be as realistic as possible. The other one is unrealistic or inability to prove a demand for your product or your service. Now, a business, in order for it to be sustainable, in order for it to make money, in order for it to make profit, in order for it to show that it can exist in the long term, there needs to be a clear demand in the market. And remember, as a funder or a financier, I might not have, full insight into the industry that you're getting into or into the business that you want to start or growing or expanding. But you need to convince me. So sometimes we are not able to convince the funders that the business idea, the product or the service that we are coming up with, the solution that we are bringing to the market, there is a demand for it. This is our fault. Maybe there is a demand, but the way you're presenting it does not show that there is actually a demand. And sometimes maybe you're presenting it in such a way that it shows that maybe the demand is minimal. It's not as much. So be careful about that. This is another one. A very poorly developed business plan that has got no coherence. Okay. There is no details, there is no coherence, there's no consistency. When you're talking about the entire business plan needs to flow. It needs to tell a whole full story. It shouldn't, reflect a picture or a perception that you have just taken information and put it together. There needs to be a coherence in your business plan, okay? And the business plan needs to be developed in a professional way, in a way that will be able to convince the funder that this person that I'm going to put my money into, or their product or their business or their service, actually knows what they're talking about based on the business plan. So sometimes what throws us off the waters, like what throws us out of the water and causes our applications to be rejected, is a poorly developed business plan. Another important one is when your business idea shows a lack of growth potential, scalability in the future, like in the business model. In the business model itself, the business presents itself as if it cannot grow beyond a certain point. That might not be appetizing, because it might feel like we're going to invest money, and as we invest the money, the business is not going to be able to scale and grow to a greater level, So the model itself needs to have a reflection of a capacity of the business idea to grow exponentially, to grow and scale. There's a way in which in the model the business can be able to show growth, sustainable growth over the long term. A business needs to grow continuously. It's not a good thing to have a business that stops growing at a certain point. It needs to grow. But sometimes the implementation model can actually stifle the growth potential of the business itself. So you need to be careful about that. Another one, remember the video I did, if you didn't watch it on the business model canvas, I did speak about value proposition. This is another one. This is another one where you are not able to clearly articulate the value that you are bringing to the market. My dears, my good people, at the core, at the nucleus of a business idea should be the value that you are bringing to the market, because that is the reason why customers are going to be buying. That is the reason why the business is going to be making money. It's because of the value that you are bringing to the marketplace. What solution are you bringing? What problem are you solving? What value are you bringing to the table? And this is sometimes the reason why your application will be rejected, is because you are not able to clearly articulate the value proposition that you are bringing to the market. Another one, and this one is all about carelessness. It's about carelessness on our side. It's about, I don't know, sometimes we feel like we are so entitled, and that funders and financiers or investors need to play our game, and of which it's the other way around. It's us who need them. It's not them who need us necessarily, okay? So this one is missing deadlines. Sometimes people are going to see an open call for a funding or a financing opportunity or an investment opportunity for their business, and then there is going to be a clear deadline that says on this date, this applications will be closed. But obviously, the means to submit might still be in existence. Like maybe you submit through an email, or you go into a platform. Maybe they haven't shut it down yet, as on the funders or financiers side, and then you go and you submit again, even though there's a closing date. And then they're going to respond to you and tell you your application has been rejected at times because you have missed the deadline. And sometimes it could be that your idea is the best of all the ideas, but because they need to be transparent and they need to be fair, In fairness and transparency, this is what most funders and financiers uphold. They are not going to be able to take your application. And then you're going to go and complain that your application, even though it was great, it was rejected. But you did not meet the deadline that was clearly stipulated. And think about it. Imagine if you had met the deadline and someone else who did not meet the deadline takes your opportunity. It would not be fair. So this is another reason why applications get rejected. The next one that links with, the one I've just spoken about is incomplete applications. Can I tell you how many application forms or applications that are submitted to funders or financiers get thrown out? They just literally get thrown out without even being assessed in terms of the content, the model, the sustainability, the profitability of the business, the value proposition, the marketing. Without even all of that being assessed, your application gets thrown out just because you have not completed everything. Good people, I don't know how many times I can be able to say this so that you understand. Every single time you are submitting a funding application, make sure that your application is completed in full. Make sure that your application is completed from A to Z. Even in a place where you don't have something right there, I do not have this one, not applicable, or some, but don't leave it blank. Make sure that you complete every single area of the application. This is a sad one. The next one is a sad one, but it's a true one. I cannot hide it from you guys. I need to tell you upfront so that you're aware. Most funders or financiers will reject your application if you have a bad credit record. And I know that as people, because of tough times, sometimes because of the economy, sometimes because of financial struggles, sometimes because we don't know how to handle our finances, sometimes because of just, being disadvantaged, sometimes because we are just reckless, we end up affecting our credit record. And in this instance, this is what I will say to you. Work on it. Start working on it, okay? You can be able to turn around your situation. It doesn't matter how bad it is. You can be able to turn that around. You can work to turn that around. It doesn't really matter how long it takes. What's important is that you can turn it around if you feel like already you're swimming. Find I think it starts with just a decision. Decide that you're going to be turning it around. Get the help that you need and make sure that you switch that situation. You do a whole 360. It is possible. It is doable. There's so many people. You can even watch them. There are people here on YouTube. There are people on different platforms, on TikToks, on Instagrams, on Facebook, talking about how they have been able to turn their situations around and improve their credit records. Because if you don't have a good credit record, you are not going to be able to, be approved sometimes, generally, mostly. Another one is too much debt. You already have too much debt on the business. You've already taken a debt in other places. You already have a lot of obligation in terms of liabilities that you need to pay back. So then when the application might be great, the idea might be amazing, the add-on that you want to put in the business by utilizing the funding or the financing, might make sense. But when they assess the financial position of the business, they can actually see that you have already taken out a lot of debt and it wouldn't make sense to give you more. And they would advise you, something like at least build the revenue of the business to a certain point or reduce some of the debt, and then we can be able to come in. Because sometimes it's a bad investment and funding choice to give someone who's already overburdened with debt more debt. It doesn't make sense. Another one in this regard is when literally the idea or the industry is very risky. Some funders, they don't fund anything that's risky. Some financiers, they stay away from anything that's risky because obviously, yes, and most of the time when there's a whole lot of risk, there is also a high potential for return. But when they weigh, as a funder or a financier, you have a risk appetite. It goes up to a certain level. You say, okay, I cannot go beyond this point. In terms of my risk appetite, I cannot go beyond this point. So any business or industry that, requires me to assist, I will evaluate based on my risk appetite, and if it goes beyond what I can comfortably take as a funder or a financier, I won't be able to approve. Not because the idea is bad, not because there's anything wrong, maybe sometimes with the application, not because there's anything wrong with the entrepreneur, but just because as a funder, as a financier, your business or the industry that you want me to get into is beyond my risk appetite, like the level of my risk appetite, and that's just it. Sometimes your application can get rejected just because of a poor sales strategy or marketing strategy. Like everything else is great, but they're not getting as to how you're actually going to do sales, how you're actually going to market and advertise the business. So if they're not sure about that, which is a very critical element to the success of a business. I know that most of us, especially as Black people, and also even bigger entities, companies like corporates, whenever there's going to be, challenges in the economy or there's reduction in costs, they start cutting marketing budgets. And of which I never understand how that works, because you need to actually have that on so that you can attract new business. I don't know how it works, but marketing and sales is one of the critical, it's the engine of the business, because you need to attract business so that your business is able to, operate, so that you can be able to have enough revenue, so that you can be able to reach your profit targets. So I don't understand why marketing gets cut, but in this instance, I'm talking about the importance of this area to a funder or a financier. And if you're not able to clearly articulate it within your application, then they will lose interest in it and they might actually reject it. Another one, guys, listen up. There is no business that does not have risk, okay? So sometimes the one thing that could get you thrown out of the water again is your inability to reflect the potential risks that this business of yours faces or might face, and your mitigation strategies. I remember working with some clients. I've worked with a couple of clients that would say, especially when I'm building their business plans, that would say, don't put any risk. There's no risk in my business. I'm like, there is no way. A funder or financier who looks at a proposal, at a submission, at a funding application, a business plan that does not have a risk element to it, then they feel like you are already, misleading. You are literally misleading them. They want to know what are the risks, and be honest, be realistic, be truthful, But the powerful thing is that as you present a risk, you present a mitigation strategy. So there is this risk that might happen in the space that I'm in, but this is the strategy, the mitigation strategy that I'm going to utilize to manage that risk. Because risk cannot be eliminated, but risk can be prepared for and can be mitigated and can be managed. Okay. Another one is a poorly developed proposal. If your proposal doesn't make sense, if your proposal doesn't make business sense, it will definitely be rejected. Sometimes your application for funding might be rejected because maybe there are legal requirements for your business, maybe and legal compliances and things like that, that you have not adequately addressed. Like your kind of business or the product or the service that you're offering, the value that you're bringing, the solution that you're bringing has got inherent legal complications or matters or issues with it, and you then need to clarify in the business. Let me make an example. Someone who is importing things from outside the country, that you need to understand that there are import conditions and regulatory provisions for that. And if in your business you are just talking about everything else, but you're not addressing what the funder might be thinking at the back of their head, that how are you going to handle the legal requirements here? You have not stated how you're going to import the product or the service, the product or the service, yeah. You have not touched on that, but you're saying that the basis of your business is import, and you have not addressed the conditions that come, the legal conditions that come as part of that. Then you're already putting me as a funder or a financier at a place where I'm feeling like, it's not make sure. The next one is a lack of clarity in terms of how the funds are going to be used. This is always funny for me, and it's funny not in a bad way. Like, I'm not laughing at people who do this thing, but it's funny in the sense that it's so interesting that you say you want money, but then you don't know how to say what you're actually going to do with the money. It's ironic. I think it's very ironic. It's a little bit funny. But a lot of people do it. And this is where I sometimes say, even your idea sometimes does not even need funding or financing. And this becomes the evidence, because now you cannot articulate what you're actually going to do with the funding. Or maybe you've requested a whole lot more funding than you actually need, So this is a problematic area. And when funders see this, they don't even move. They take your application and say, unfortunately, it has been rejected. Another one is an inadequate understanding of the funder's priorities and criteria. Guys, can we please be sensitive when it comes to this? Remember, I said this earlier. I said it is us who need the funders and financiers. It is not the other way around, okay? It is not necessarily the other way around. It is us who need the funding and the financing into our businesses. So we need to be sensitive to the funder. Don't come here with a condescending, demanding, entitled attitude when you are dealing with a funder or a financier. It doesn't matter even if it's a development finance institution or it's a government instrument, or you feel like you are entitled to it. Get out of that mentality. Leave that mentality at the door. It's not going to help you, because it is your responsibility to go and understand what are the priorities of the funder so that you can position yourself and align yourself with those priorities and align yourself with the funder's criteria, and not come there and demand that the funder adjust themselves to you. And as a result, if you are submitting a proposal or a funding application or a financing application that is misaligned to the criteria and the priorities of the funder, then automatically your application is going to get rejected. Another one is just that you are not compatible with the funder. It's a lack of compatibility. You are not compatible with the funder. There is nothing wrong with your idea. There is nothing wrong with your submission. You have checked all the boxes, but the problem is alignment. You are just not aligned. You are misaligned with the funder or the financier. And that does not mean you should throw in the towel. Just knock on another funder that you're going to align with. Funders have got goals, objectives, missions, visions. They have a mandate that they're trying to deliver to, that they're trying to meet. And sometimes your business idea, your product, your service, your value is misaligned to the funder, is not compatible. You and the funder are not compatible. And that's why your application is rejected. Another one that I want to appeal to you in terms of sensitivity again. Most funders or financiers will have something called guidelines, okay? There are guidelines that they develop as part of helping anyone who is a potential partner to them, or anyone who would potentially make use of their funding or their financing instruments and stuff like that, to understand exactly how the fund operates, functions, works, the expectations, and things like that, objectives, what they're trying to achieve. This is the one document that before you even go and apply, you're supposed to just spend your time understanding. Usually these documents are like a couple of pages, like 30 pages, 40 pages, sometimes 100. It varies from funder to financier, or from funder to funder, from financier to financier. You need to spend time understanding the guidelines, because as you go through the guidelines, you are like putting a mirror to yourself, shining a light on your business to see, should I pursue this or not? Because you do not want to be wasting your time with, trying to submit applications at places or with institutions or with funders and financiers that you are not going to meet their guideline requirements. So another reason why we get rejected sometimes is because of we don't meet the guidelines. We just don't meet the guidelines. This is another painful one. This is a pain. And a lot of startups don't like this one. But unfortunately, this is how funders or financiers work. This one is a lack of, operational history. Most of the funders or financiers, they want to work with a business that has already started. They don't want to work with a business that is new. That is why I always say start with 100 Rand that you have, with the 2 Rand that you have, start. Funders and financiers are going to meet you on the way, because the first thing that's going to disqualify you is the fact that you have nothing that has already started. And the appetite of funders or financiers is very low when it comes to new startups, especially here in South Africa. It's not the same, as we really don't have proper mechanisms in our country to support startups necessarily. Like, we struggle in that area, but at least there are programs that are in kind, that are non-financial support that exist to kind of get you from a starting level, and move with you from the right to from before you have an idea. And, we've got a lot of incubation programs and institutions that stand to assist in the development stage, the pre-startup stage, I guess. Yeah. But when it comes to funding and financing, most institutions want operational history. And the minimum is like 6 months. The ones I've seen, they always demanding 6 months. And they want this in the form of management accounts, in the form of financial statements, in the form of bank statements as well. The other one, which is also very sad, but is also a truth that we need to understand, some funders will require collateral. And if you don't have the collateral, then automatically your application is going to be disqualified or your application is going to be rejected. You are not going to get the funding or the financing that you require. The last one for today is a lack of funding readiness. And this, I want to talk about it in two areas. The first area that I want to address is that you basically don't have compliance. I have a whole video. You can find it right here on my page. You can find it right here. I talk about funding readiness. At least if you have those documents that I touch on in that video, you can generally be able to be at a better position before you go for funding. So that's the first one. You are not funding ready in terms of you don't have the compliance documents required. Number two, you are not funding ready because you don't need the funding. At the stage that your business is in, you actually don't need the funding. And it links back to one of the areas I touched on earlier to say that sometimes you're then not able to articulate what you're going to do with the money that you're looking for because you don't need money at this stage. Some businesses just don't need money at all. At a certain stage. Maybe you might need money at expansion, and even at expansion, they're going to scrutinize the business. If it's a good business and you're making revenues, then why not reinvesting the money into the business to grow it? Sometimes there are so many reasons why we don't really need money. We don't always need the money. Okay? And yes, those are the common reasons why some funding applications actually get rejected by funders. I hope that you are now going to have something to reference when you are preparing your application so that you are able to eliminate or correct some of these areas and mitigate your application actually going to a point where it's rejected or not approved just because there are some of like your application or you as a business or the industry you operate in or the product or the service or the offering that you're bringing actually has some of these problems. So work hard on correcting some of these so that you stand a better chance to have your application go through. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to my returning subscribers. And if you are new, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that you're kept abreast of when we put up new content. And that is all for me for today. Until next time, stay absolutely blessed.